I think I'm going through a midlife crisis right now. I wanted to be an astronaut.
Aw, that's so cute.
I love the answer. Like, aw, that's never fucking motivating. But that's cute. That's cute. You can't go to an interview and be like, so do you think I'll like the people here?
My coworker.
Yeah. Do any of them play board games?
I think in our parents' generation, if they actually work hard and they made a lot of money, like they could afford a house. We can't now. Like we need like 2-3 jobs to be able to do that. We still can't afford things. Welcome back to That 30 Show.
Welcome back, everyone. It's good to be back. How's it going?
It's going good. I know. I feel like
good.
because we don't record every week now, I feel kind of like off the groove a little bit. Like it's not part of our weekly routine anymore. How was the weekend so far?
It's been pretty chill. Yeah. I mean, we're recording on Sunday. Usually Sunday's the chores day. Buy groceries, not really meal prep, but start cooking and have some stuff to eat during the weekend. So pretty boring stuff, to be honest.
I had a pretty chill weekend too. But by Sunday, I always get the Sunday scaries, which is actually interesting though, because I love Mondays. So I don't know why I get the Sunday scaries, because if I like Mondays, I shouldn't be scared of Sundays, but I am.
I have never heard of this term. Sunday scaries? Like,
oh, really?
Sure, is it a thing?
It is. I think it's either to do with you having FOMO for the weekend about things that you wish you had done, but you didn't, or it's like the dread and anticipation for the work week, like the upcoming work week. So people usually get like the Sunday scaries because it's like Sunday and then they're about to start a new work week the next week. So do you ever get that? Do you ever get the Sunday scaries? It sounds like every weekend.
Yeah, but I think it's mitigated because I have Monday as a work from home day, and doesn't mean I don't work, but like it's just a lot more chill, right? Like I'm like, I don't have to. When you don't have to get out of the house, it just makes a huge difference.
I used to have Monday work from home, but then I chose to switch it so that I have Monday work from office. Maybe now I have extra Sunday scaries. I just kind of like getting out of the house after the weekend. Like I've been at home all weekend, and I like the.
You've been at home all weekend? I don't believe that.
Well, yeah, most of the weekend. So
I mean, I don't know if I usually have too much Sunday scaries, but I have to admit, lately I probably have a bit more because there's no pretty way to put it, but I think I'm going through a midlife crisis right now.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I'm 30, so I'm 34, I think. So assuming I live to 70, which is hopefully a safe bet, it is a midlife. Because like, am I at my midlife yet?
This is around the time though, when people have like midlife crisis. I feel like this is around the time.
In your mid-30s, I think so. And that's kind of a bit of a juicy topic. We'll get into it in terms of how people often relate to where their life trajectory is going, especially career-wise in their 30s. We've talked about this in the past, right? Where in your 20s, you're kind of going through the motions. It's your first job, or you're in graduate school, and things don't really seem to matter too much yet. You don't have a serious or long-term relationship oftentimes, or kids are not anywhere near the horizon. But once you hit your 30s, depending on how your career came to be, you might start thinking, wait, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Like, is this actually it? In a nutshell, for me, part of the reason why I'm having a midlife crisis is basically the short of it is I'm on a contract with my work right now, and that contract's going to end next summer. So I'm like, okay, what's my next step? What's my next move? I mean, obviously I have options. I have experience, continue doing what I've been doing in the industry that I'm in. But it's got me thinking about, where is my life and career and headed? And what do I like about sort of the work I've been doing? What do I not like about it? Is this an opportunity that could push me to make a change that I otherwise wouldn't make? It's kind of a reset point because I've not typically been in a contract role.
I actually have I have a contract myself that's ending in really close to when yours is ending, if next year, spring.
Yeah. Next summer.
So I've also been thinking about the same thing. But I mean, I think I would stay in my field. I just don't know what what other job I would do. But you might actually completely change. Like that's something that you've thought about, is completely changing.
Yeah, I mean, it's sure, why not, right? there is, so, coming to this episode, obviously by the title, you all know we're talking about why people might want to change jobs, why people might not be happy with their jobs. And as I said, oftentimes this comes up in your 30s. But I'm trying to figure out, wait, what can I share without potentially not necessarily getting fired, but like, what can I share on air in the public? Because this is a sensitive topic. I think even among, even if you're in a closed door environment, you want to be careful about kind of who you're talking to and what you say about colleagues, about work, about, your employer, because, if you want to stay in the industry, word gets around, etc. So I apologize in advance if I'm going to be more vague about anything that I want to bring up personally. There have been challenges at work for me. I think that's pretty broad way to speak about it, hopefully. I don't think that that's a hot take. I think there's many different reasons why people might feel like their work has been challenging. But because of those challenges, it's made, my next move more of a decision than it might otherwise be.
It's funny because I used to think that, like when I was younger, I used to think that, okay, by your 30s, all of my friends will have their career paths, and that's the thing that they're going to be doing basically for the rest of their lives. And like, I thought that I would have the same thing. But actually, like just thinking about, my friend groups and where people are at with their careers, there's a lot of shifting around, like either to different fields or moving around to different jobs, or the thought of moving around, switching it up. And it's just like when I was younger, I would have never thought that this would be the case in our 30s. Like maybe around like in our early 20s is when we would jump around a lot, go travel and move around. But it's actually happening in our 30s. So yeah, I wonder if it's a millennial / Gen Z thing, or if it is just sign of the times.
I think it's because of, sort of the first question I want to pose about this topic, which is, how did we all end up in our current jobs and careers? Is it either one of two things? Is it either A, because of what I would call momentum or circumstance, or is it B, because of deliberate intention? Did we decide on this as a goal, like Michael, maybe, or guest from a few months ago? Or is it like through happenstance, through coincidence? Because I think if you end up in a job that you kind of fell into, you might end up liking it a lot, and that's fine. But in the end, if that's the case for you, maybe there are other jobs or other careers where you might think it's kind of that what if question. It's like, well, I mean, life is pretty good, but like, what if I tried something different that might be even more in line with my interests or with my skills? So can I ask for you, do you feel that you ended up in the current job and career you have more due to deliberate intention or due to momentum and circumstance?
It's a little bit of both, because like my job started as a co-op job. So I applied based on interest and what I thought I would like. But then through a series of opportunities, I was able to move up in the roles, and I was, able to get like a more stable career from it. So it was like a little bit of both. And then I also learned to enjoy it throughout throughout my time there. So,
well, what you said there about like you learn to like it or whatnot, or learn to be even better at it, I think that's actually it's a really critical concept, which is passion is not found. Passion is not found. You don't just sit there and suddenly be like, oh, I want to do X or Y. Passion is created through action and through competence. I think that's the part that, for myself and maybe others, is often a barrier, which is, you have to suffer through some things before you can really create a passion for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you do something well, if you're good at something, then you could be more passionate about it. But do you think that's the case? Because I think you're good at your job. I mean, I don't know, but I would assume that you're really good at your job. But do you think that led to a passion for it, or not necessarily?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that question, but as a quick tangent to that, a common thing that I've thought about, are you good at your job because you love the work, and or do you love your work because you're good at the job? I feel like my personality or my skill set might make me a good lawyer. But I've always thought that if I ended up going to law school and becoming a lawyer, I think it would be one of those jobs where I like it because I'm good at it, but I'm not good at it because I like it. So the reason I bring up this dichotomy is because I've never really wanted to do something because I'm good at it. Just because I'm good at it, I think that's not a sustainable reason to like something. Enjoying a job almost primarily because you're just good at it, but it's not actually, it doesn't align with your values. It doesn't align with the mission that you want to develop for your life. Do you think that that sort of binary or dichotomy there, does that make sense to you?
It makes sense, but I never really found it to play a role in my decision to stay with a job or not, like whether I'm good at it or whether it's, I mean, I think about the passion, whether I like it or not, but I never really think about, okay, well, is it because I'm good at it or is it because I'm passionate so that I am become good at it?
Well, for my first job, I was, in an administrative role, and I really liked it. But I think I really liked it because I was really good at it. But then I don't think it's common for people to love an administrative role because you have limited creative input. It's not that fulfilling just to do transactional work. But I really liked it. And I think I really liked it because I was really good at it. But
do you think that you are passionate about your job because you're good at it?
I'm definitely more of the momentum and circumstance rather than deliberate intention. Right. And I think that might be why after about over a decade in the same industry, it's become more of a question mark for me about, okay, where is this headed? How can I evolve this? Even if I stay in the industry, how do I evolve kind of the role I'm in to make it, keep it in line with my long-term happiness? And so I wonder if that's common for folks, which is like you're in a job and you're pretty good at it, but does it really tap into your key strengths or your key interests? And if there isn't that perfect alignment, does it create question marks for whether you want to continue in that long term? Like for you, do you have a innate like talent, strength, or burning interest that you think your current job might not satisfy?
I think I utilize a lot of my strengths in my work. So maybe that is one reason that I enjoy staying there. That's and awesome. I also feel like there's a lot of room for development too on the skills that I feel like I should or want to work on. So there is kind of that balance there for my work. And I always thought the day that like how I know what an indicator would be for me to change my role is if there's one day where I just like know everything and there's no room for growth in my role anymore. That is like when I'll know for sure that I need to move. Since that hasn't happened yet, I'm still there. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, I'm so happy that you feel that way. I'm curious though. Did you have like a childhood, or maybe not childhood? You can talk about teenage years or high school. But growing up, did you have this idea or vision or dream of basically what you want to be when you grow up? Not really. I never had. Like there wasn't one thing that I really wanted to be.
Well, I mean, we don't have to talk about it too practically. What about if I asked 6-year-old G? What do you want to be when you grow up? You didn't have that childhood, like unrealistic, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher. That's boring.
Not really. What did you want to be?
I wanted to be an astronaut.
Aw, that's so cute.
I love the answer, like, aw, that's never fucking happened, David, but that's cute.
Yeah, that just...
Because I love space and stuff, so I was a huge... I'm a huge space nerd.
Right. That was cute. I mean, maybe at one point I wanted to be a librarian.
Ooh. I always wanted to work at Chapters growing up.
Yeah, at a bookstore.
Every time I go to Chapters, it would be like heaven to me as a kid.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool to work here.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would still be cool to work there if, like being surrounded by books all the time.
So... do you hear this sentiment from your friends? Like generally the idea like, oh, do I want to change what I'm doing? Am I happy with the trajectory? Or even if you are happy, do you want to sort of just look for something different or something more for the sake of personal growth and satisfaction? And the what if question of like, oh, I'm good at this job, I like it, but what if I sort of went for something that I'm choosing more intentionally or deliberately?
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone kind of thinks about that too. Like, because for me, I like my job most of the time, but it's not all of the time. And so when there are moments of like frustration in my work, I'm just like, oh, what if I was doing something else right now and I didn't have to like be here anymore? You know, like I think we all have those moments. But I have friends who are more consistently thinking about that. Like, what if, I quit my job and went and did something different, or even work for a different company, if they've been there for quite a few years, right? And a lot of it, I mean, I kind of asked my friends, and there's some different reasons why people would want to change their jobs. I mean, some have said it's coworkers, like if they're surrounded by good coworkers, or if they're just every day they're like stressed out by the people that they work with. Obviously, there would be like, some job dissatisfaction there. If there's not like growth or learning involved, which is one of my major things, is if I'm not feeling like fulfilled in my job. And it could come from, the work, or just different processes that you have to go through in your day-to-day work, and you're just not feeling fulfilled. Or a pay, if they're feeling like they're overworked and underpaid, that's a big one too.
I mean, the overwork part is key, because like, who doesn't feel they're underpaid? Not underpaid, but like, who doesn't feel like they could be given more money? No one's gonna be like, no, you pay me enough. No raise, please, no raise.
Yeah.
I did make a list of what I feel are common reasons that people become dissatisfied with their work. And so I think you mentioned a few of them, but I kind of want to go through them as one. So I think you mentioned your coworkers, right? So for me, the point was, maybe people are dissatisfied because they feel that they're in a toxic environment, or they don't like their coworkers, or there's like a lot of politics. Like, what's that stereotypical coworker that just no one really enjoys? Like, what is it? What does that look like?
For me, it's like the pessimistic, negative coworker. If you bring ideas, they're like, no, that's not going to work. They don't, work like in a group setting. They just kind of do their own thing. They know what their role is, and that's all they do. They don't, reach out to like help other people, and they just kind of like shoot down all ideas, resistant to kind of all change or innovation. To me, like that's a difficult coworker to work with.
So it's more related to how they respond to their work, even, because for me, I think about what I think about is, if there's a coworker who's really annoying, like like really nosy, or like spreads gossip, or asks really invasive questions about your personal life.
I feel like I could just tune that out. I don't know that would necessarily really affect how I feel about work and stuff, even though I would be around them a lot, because like you work with them. But like, I think the frustration would come from the work itself for me. Like, if that person affected how I work or my work somehow.
I do think, and I hear this from a lot of folks, and I definitely agree, your coworkers are maybe maybe the top reason for why you may enjoy your job. Like, the job may be average, but if your coworkers are awesome, that's good.
That's true.
Like I've heard from friends like, I would not come to work if it's not for my coworkers.
Yeah.
It can make a huge difference. Even if the job is amazing, right? Imagine the job is amazing, but you hate half your coworkers. You're not going to like your job. I feel like that's really a luck of the draw, a roll of the dice, because you can't go to an interview and be like, so do you think I'll like the people here?
My coworkers.
Do any of them play board games, or?
So rarely do you have a job that you strictly work by yourself on, right? I mean, all jobs require collaboration of some sort and working in a team. So
and you're not going to know that until you actually go to work and you meet the people, and you're like, God damn, these people are not my people.
Yeah. I mean, even if you ask that on an interview, they don't know your personality. So they could be like, yeah, these people are great. And then you get there and you're like, what? They suck.
Yeah. That's actually something I thought about, and both from a interviewer experience and as an interviewee experience, which is, how do you gauge? For example, they always ask, you should try and gauge for culture, culture fit. That's really important. You want to get a sense of whether you're a good fit there, because it's not just about whether you can do the job. It's about whether you would fit in well with the environment. And so, for example, I've been asked, tell me, David, tell me about the office the work environment, or tell me about the office culture. And if I'm working at a place where there are concerns. Like it's not like not like 100% great, which oftentimes how often is it 100% like amazing? There's always like little gripes here and there, or bigger gripes depending on where you are. I kind of had to. I can't be like, yeah, so there's like Bobby here. Don't get too close to him when you're here, or be like, oh, this manager, just do this or that, or otherwise it's going to be like I can't actually tell the truth.
Yeah.
And so to your point, how do you gauge that? Because you go in an interview and you ask them, so tell me about your work culture. And they're like, oh, we have pizzas on Fridays and whatever. But they're not going to tell you, oh, and we're going to micromanage the shit out of your work.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's on the interviewer or the employer to kind of gauge like that person's personality and like best fit too with the team, because only you would know how your culture is. So maybe you then would want to hire someone that you feel like would fit into your culture well, rather than the other way around, because they would have no idea. They'd be like, okay, I just want this job. And some people are less picky about, some people can work really well with a lot of different people. Like I feel like I'm kind of like that. I work well with basically anybody. So
let's pick on that then, the idea you work well with everybody. Another main reason why people might become dissatisfied with their work is they have a bad manager, or they don't like their manager, don't like their supervisor. The saying goes, people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad managers. Have you heard about that saying?
Yeah, I have heard about that. I mean, I feel really lucky in that I have a really, really supportive manager and team. So that is definitely one of the reasons why I would stick around, for sure.
Yeah. Can you articulate a bit? Either you can talk about it in the positive or the negative. What does a bad manager do? What does a good manager do?
I feel like a good manager really listens to like what you're saying. Sometimes like, I don't know, you say something and kind of goes over their head, or they like address it a little bit, but you know that they're not really listening. Like I think you can really tell if somebody's listening to you or
they're
not.
just doing lip service or something. They're just doing lip service.
Yeah. To me, I don't know. I think the one word that just comes up is just like supportive. Like in what, hearing you out if you have concerns, or like if you feel like, your workload is, and then they're very attentive to it and they actually try to help you out in that sense. They respect like the boundaries too, like they don't, micromanage you or whatever.
Yeah, that's a fine balance though, right? Because they want to help you, but they can't. If they help you too much, it becomes micromanaging. So how do you find that boundary between respecting your autonomy and your ability, but also being there to help you with your work?
My boss does it extremely well. So, and I'm not just saying that because he's not going to listen to it, but it's.
She wants a raise.
No, I mean, we just had our performance review and I told him the same thing. So
nice. So something that I think about when it comes to what makes a good manager is the idea of servant leadership. Have you heard of this concept?
Kind of.
Maybe guess what it means.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of this, and I think that this is really what makes a difference. And it's in a way, it is being supportive, but it goes there's a few more layers to that. So servant leadership is basically, as a leader, you are there to serve the people that you lead. And so there's an element of not humility necessarily, but there's an element of you check your ego at the door. It's not about elevating yourself. It's about elevating your direct reports. That's what good leadership and good manager is to me. You're trying to give the people that you lead all the tools and resources that they need to do their best work. If the people you lead are thriving, if they're achieving their potential, if they're doing their best work, then you have succeeded as a manager. So essentially, I think a good manager is one who like never in the spotlight and never makes it about themselves.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But that's really hard because it requires you to not be ego driven. And I think that it's actually quite common. I mean, we all have egos, right? Like that's a whole thing. I'm sure you read about that in many self-help books. But when that manifests in a workplace, it can often, I think, be quite counterproductive, because then your managers are looking out for themselves and what sort of serves their reputation. So
I don't know. I think also, though, a good leader, a good manager is aware of their employees, because every employee is going to be different. So if they are able to tailor their leadership style to their different employees, that is Whoa, that is a
Yeah.
good manager, because honestly, some people need to be micromanaged. Like they just need to be,
Yeah, that's a good point.
like they need their work reviewed a lot more. And maybe they like that too. They want to be like, that's how they feel support, is if they're micromanaged all the time. But some people don't. So I think if you as a manager can tap into that, understand that each employee is different and tailor your leadership to different employees, like that is cool.
But that is so cool, but that requires such intentional, in my opinion, servant leadership sort of mindset effort. Because how do you do that? I mean, you can gauge that through experience and through time, but I think it's so helpful and critical. And often, can you imagine how it make the employee feel if you sit down with them and have a conversation that is 360, right? What I mean by 360 is, so you're getting feedback and providing feedback in all directions. You're telling the employee what you expect and need from them, and you're asking and welcoming them to tell you what they expect and need from you, right? Or you can ask them like, how would you like to be managed? Basically, the question of like, what's the most effective way I can help you do your best work?
Yeah.
What does feedback look like? What does checking your work look like? What do you want to talk about during our check-ins? Do you think you'd be comfortable or wanting a manager position? Sorry, not you. I don't know but like, do you have direct reports right now?
I don't have direct reports right now, but I've had in the past.
Have you enjoyed that experience of supervising someone?
This is one of the things where like, I think I'm good at it, but I don't know if I necessarily enjoy it. Yeah. I think
How come you don't enjoy it?
I don't know. I mean, maybe that this is different from job to job, but I do feel like once you become more of a manager or director role, your work is more focused on managing people. You do a lot more signings. It's more the overarching stuff versus I think I still really like the work that I do, like the actual work in it of itself. So yeah. And just managing, I mean, sometimes you get really great people to manage and it makes it easier. Sometimes it's harder. So it gets challenging sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because when you go up the ladder, if you will, and you become managers, right? You have direct reports. I think it is very common in most industries that the nature of that work means that you become more and more removed from the work that got you to that position. You're not actually doing the work anymore. And as you climb up the ladder, it becomes more and more, the job description is essentially you're managing people. You know, let's say you are, I don't know, I just a weird example first one's like, let's say you're like a truck driver or like a taxi driver or something, right?
Yeah.
And then you drive your truck for like 5 years and you're really good at it. And then you become like shift supervisor. You're still like driving the truck, but then now you're managing the schedules and making sure everyone's on track. And then you get promoted, and then you get promoted to the desk job. You're not driving the trucks anymore. And then you're like, I miss driving my damn truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of that in our, like, it's so different between the more technical people and then it's like, it's completely different after a while. So I think, I mean, a lot of people like to stay in that role.
So you have a lot of people, I think, that do not want the promotion actually, because it's like, well, I don't want the stress and the responsibility and the lack of work-life balance and the lack of the direct work that comes with that manager position. Because when you're in a manager position, as we said, you're probably doing less of that work that you really like, that you've done for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But you also have more stress and responsibilities. You're going to be the one who's putting out fires on weekends in the evenings, because before you don't have to, but now the buck ends with you. If you're like the CEO of, I don't know, some super important company and something happens on the weekend, you'll be like, no, it's a Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone else will deal with it. Someone above me will deal with it. You don't have that anymore. Yeah. Do you think you would like that kind of role? Or
I don't think I would like that role that I just talked about in terms of like, oh, I have to work. It basically, once the work involuntarily impedes on my personal life, I think that's when I'd be like, no, heck no. Can you imagine if I'm with my kids or with my partner at the park, and then suddenly I have to go take a work call? Oh my God, that would make me feel like I'm such a bad father or like a bad partner.
Happens all the time though. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want that.
Okay.
Let's wrap up this question. Some of the other reasons that people become dissatisfied with work.
I'm curious, like did we already cover like the work itself?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But
I think that's a big one.
we can take a washroom break while you formulate on what points you want to bring there.
You can take a washroom break.
Okay.
The actual work, because I think people nowadays will consider leaving their job if they're just not interested in like the topic of their work or
So like
the
you
actual.
don't like driving your you get bored of driving your truck. You're like, no more driving trucks.
Yes, but I think this is such a millennial Gen Z thing because there's more options now, I think. Like there's so many different new careers that you could do. I'm thinking like lifestyle or content creation as one example, right? That didn't exist back when our parents were working and there weren't that many job options. So even if they didn't like their job, like that would not be one of the reasons to move around. Like, or they didn't even think about that, I think, at that time. But now we are like a bit more picky. We're like, do we actually like the work that we're doing? And if not, is that something that we should then change?
I think having more options and the ability to the sort of the mobility, right? Because you have remote jobs, you have the ability to fly around the world and go work anywhere if you're willing to move, which didn't really happen, 50 years ago, is definitely key. I think there's also just a simple either a personal mindset change or the fact that society is more economically, well, I don't know, present day we feel this, but society is more economically abundant, because we talked about this, I think, even on our episode 1 or 2. Back in the day, there's this idea that at least our parents, right? They work in the factory or they do some job, but it's no one ever in that generation asked themselves, oh, is this my dream job? Like, can you imagine that, like, for them, the audacity to ask for that? It's like, no, we're working hard to like earn money for our kids, for our family, and it's tough work, but like it's work and it's life, and we just gotta suck it up. How many people in our parents' generation are gonna ask themselves this question, like, oh, do I like this work? Oh, like I don't like the hours. Like, come on. So again, I'm generalizing, but you know that sentiment, right? It's a pretty big generational shift where maybe the boomers will look at people like us and be like, wow, these people are just so entitled, they're so picky, they're so self-centered. You have a good job, you just do it, you provide for your family. I don't know what I'm using that voice. Is that
I did see this TikTok once, and I think it just like it went viral about this girl who was talking about, she was like, oh, I don't want to work anymore. And she's like, well, right away, I know everyone's going to be like, you're just lazy and entitled and whatever. Like, she's like, all the Gen Y and boomers are going to say that. But she's like, it's because when I work hard and I make the money, I still can't afford shit. Like, I think in our parents' generation, if they actually work hard and they made a lot of money, like they could afford a house, they could buy things. Whereas we can't now. Like, even if we work really hard and make, like, we need like 2-3 jobs to be able to do that, we still can't afford things. Like, things are just so much more expensive. So it's like, we can't even see the rewards. You can't save. You can't buy a home. It's like, where's more
look
money
at G,
going?
just bringing in the negative vibes today.
This is from the TikTok that I saw.
No, but you're absolutely right. And I think the common way that people have started to refer to this sentiment that you're sharing is the American dream is dead.
Oh, ouch.
Wah, wah, wah. Like, cue the sad funeral song. But yeah, the American dream is dead. This idea that if you just work hard and you're like, do an honest job, that you can have a house, have a family. I say American dream just because I think everyone understands what that means. It's not just in America. I think Canada is a very similar economy. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Especially, I don't know, in Trudeau's Canada, people talk about it whether you believe it or not. But the fact is, things are freaking expensive now. I saw an image, I think, for like a pack of chicken thighs a few weeks ago. It was like $32. Now it's like $49. I was like, what?
Yeah.
You get sticker. I don't know about you, but I get sticker shock now when I go to the supermarket. I'm like, what the actual F? Like, what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, people just can't afford things, right? So it's like, surprising too, because we have so much more technology that we have for us. So things that we used to like take a long time for us to do is now easier. It's quicker. It's faster. Yet
Yeah.
it's still, things are more expensive.
I wonder if there are any listeners who live in a different place, but I wonder how much our feeling of like the futility of our hard work, I wonder how much of it is informed or influenced by the fact that that you and I, as hosts of this podcast, that we live in Vancouver. Because Vancouver, even if you don't live here, Vancouver is one of the least affordable cities in the world, at least when it comes to housing. In Canada, the economy in general is not doing good by any objective measure. So I wonder if you live in another city, you'd be like, oh no, if I work hard, I can make ends meet, right? Because you take $500,000, you can buy a pretty big house, if not mansion, most places in the world. It's just in Vancouver that buys you a shoebox.
I get those videos from Texas where it's like,
oh my God, me too.
500K. And then I'm like, what? It's like an entire
Instagram
house.
Yeah, I get those Instagram reels, right? Yeah, it shows you this giant. I was like, $400,000. You get this 10-bedroom house with a pool. I'm like, I personally don't have anything really tie me down to Vancouver. So I've told my partner, I'm like, I know it's not realistic, but just putting this out there, if you ever want to move, I'm game to talk about it because Vancouver is so expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So many people are having these conversations too. I find that like my friends or whoever I talk to are like, yeah, we might consider moving out of Vancouver.
All right, so. Edmonton, here we come. That 30 show is moving to Edmonton, to a frozen wasteland near you. No. There's this thing that I read in a book called How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen that I've actually wanted to talk about on a Lessons On podcast for a while, but I never got to it. But it's just this one theory in the first chapter that just blew my mind. So Clayton Christensen, the author, is a Harvard Business School professor. And as you can imagine, the book talks about how you will measure your life. And I think the premise is that when he graduated from Harvard Business School, him and many of his peers are among the most elites in the world in terms of their potential, in terms of their abilities, their intelligence, their background to be able to go to Harvard. And so the world is their oyster. And what ended up happening that he noticed was that most of his peers, not all of them for sure, but many, if not most of his peers, when they went for the reunions 15, 20 years down the road, many were very unhappy with their life. And it's like, well, if you're in this position, graduating from Harvard Business School, all these connections that you have, if anyone's going to be able to figure out how to have a happy life, it's these folks, right? So why are all these people who, and it's not because they're poor. Most, if not all of them, are filthy rich, right? Because they ended up working for Wall Street, whatever. So he's like,
can I guess why it was?
Sure.
Were you going to say it?
No, it's a bit of a longer 10-minute spiel here, but yeah, why?
Oh, well, I think I saw something similar to like a Stanford, like someone who was giving a speech at Stanford, and he was saying it's because these people never end up facing adversity in their careers. So he's like, please, I think he was saying something like, I really hope for the sake of your life that you go through hard times.
Wait, who said this?
And this was I think it was like a keynote speaker, guest speaker at a Stanford graduation.
I think that's actually part of it. That's not, they don't frame it that way, but let me put a pin on that and I'll get back to you. But speaking of suffering though, there's a quote that I came across really recently that I really, really like, which is by the famous Stoic Seneca. The quote goes, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." I think that's quote summarizes what you're trying to get at, right? When you don't have to rise above something, life is not actually that rewarding. So what I want to talk about for many weeks now is this theory that really helps us understand why might we not like our jobs, or why might we really like our jobs? Like, how do we understand, what's a framework that helps us understand how we relate to how satisfied we are at a job? First off, some people might say, okay, this person's not happy. They're just, as you said, they're overworked, they're underpaid. Just give them more money. Can you imagine? no matter what complaints you have about your work, if I just give you $1 million,
Give me
do
some
you
more
think that
money.
will, yeah, like, let's say I give you $1 million salary. Do you think that will assuage your concerns and your dissatisfaction? Probably.
Yeah.
So this is what they call incentive theory. They're like, oh, you have employees that are dissatisfied. They're just not properly incentivized to come to work. You're probably not paying them enough. As long as people have the right incentives, they will be motivated. What do you think about that? Does that hold water for you?
I mean,
G's like, I know, why don't you just try giving me $1 million salary? We'll see. We'll talk about that.
yeah, I mean, at some point, I don't think it's enough. Like, yes, of course. I mean, I would love to be making $1 million or whatever, but
Yeah.
at some point, I think that the happiness kind of diminishes after a while. I mean, it's a classic example, right? Like money is just not enough. Like the more money you make, your margin of happiness, like increasing is like
diminishing returns. Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine what's a job that you absolutely hate doing 9 to 5? Just you personally. And we're not judging the job itself, but what would you not like to do?
Lawn mowing.
Okay. So imagine, you have to literally lawn mow 40 hours a week, right? You're not just doing 1 or 2 jobs. You're pushing that lawnmower 7 hours a day. And I pay you $1 million to do it.
I mean, yeah, I would love to do it for some time, but
yeah,
after a while, I don't think I would.
So the problem with incentive theory is not just because she will not lawn mow for $1 million a year, or maybe she will, or maybe she.
I absolutely will. Okay. Just putting that out there, I absolutely would do that.
Okay, so if anyone actually wants, and if anyone needs to have their lawn mowed for 35 hours a week and willing to pay $1 million, you know where to contact G. But no, so the big flaw with incentive theory is that you have some of the hardest working people in the world working for nonprofits or working in difficult conditions or life-threatening conditions like in disaster relief. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement pays well. Not law enforcement. Yeah, law enforcement / the military pays well, I think, from what I gather. But it's a job that like has a very high level of danger and threat, right? Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of people who work really hard, who are very motivated to do what they do, but they're not earning a lot of money, or the incentive is like, oh, you might die today. It's like, well, that's not a really good incentive to go to work, right? So there's the problem with incentive theory. It doesn't really explain all the cases. And so the mind-blowing theory that I really like is what they call motivation theory, or two-factor theory, which is you can pay people to incentivize them, but that's not the same thing as motivation. True motivation is getting people to do something because they want to do it. So how do we do this? The two-factor theory helps us understand that job satisfaction is not on a single continuum. It's not just, you're not just swaying between being really satisfied with your job to being really dissatisfied with your job. Whether you're satisfied or dissatisfied, it says they're actually on two different individual planes. That's why people say that you can often both love your job, but also hate your job. You hate your job and you love your job. Do you think of an example of why someone would both hate and love their job?
Well, I mean, it would be due to different reasons, I guess. I mean, some people might love the job because it pays their bills, but then they don't love their job because it doesn't fulfill them.
That's actually exactly correct. I mean, you shared the theory in a very colloquial way that probably connects with people, which is great. And I'll just sort of expand on the technical terms here. But the two-factor theory is the two factors are hygiene factors and motivation factors. So what you just said is, well, what if it pays the bills? So paying the bill is what they would call hygiene factors. Hygiene factors are, if these factors are not done right, we're not going to be happy no matter what. Salary, work conditions, a good manager. If you have good work conditions, if you have a good manager, if you have a good salary, you're not going to hate your job, but you might not love it. It's okay, right? It's good, but it might not fulfill you, as you said. So what's going to fulfill you? You have a guess? It's not hard.
Your motivational factors.
Yes, yeah. But like, what are those? What are those?
Yeah, I mean, nature of your work, like how fulfilled you feel at your work. I don't know.
No, but like, what makes you feel fulfilled? Being fulfilled is not a criteria unto itself. There are certain sources of that fulfillment.
If you feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah. Well, for you, right? You said earlier, it's you gotta be learning something new.
Growing.
Yeah. So those are the motivation factors: challenging work, getting recognition for your work, feeling like you have a high degree of responsibility, and personal growth. So these are those like less tangible things. You can't, there's no number you can
More
put in it.
subjective too.
More subjective. Yeah. Yeah. So what ended up happening with a lot of Clayton Christensen's peers from Harvard Business School is that they used hygiene factors as the primary criteria, especially when it comes to income. So they end up dissatisfied because even though money isn't the root cause of professional unhappiness, when the problem arises when you prioritize money or a hygiene factor over all else. So for example, even when the hygiene factor is satisfied, oh, I'm making enough money. I make 200K a year. I have enough money. The problem arises when the mission or the quest remains to only just make more money. So like the hygiene factor wasn't satisfied, you're searching for even better hygiene factors, which is even higher salary, for example. But once the hygiene factors are met, once you're happy with your salary, your working condition, and your good manager, then you have to really stop pursuing that and pursue what challenging work, more responsibility, and opportunities that will give you personal growth.
Where do you think you are on those two scales with your job?
What can I say publicly? I don't
Which
think I
one's
can say
higher?
public-
Your hygiene factors?
Definitely hygiene factors. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably most people. Like the motivational part, like I said, it's more subjective. So it's more clear cut with the hygiene stuff.
I think I'd rather
hygiene.
yeah, I don't know why
I
they
don't like
call
that
it
word.
I think it's kind of like moist. Ugh,
Yeah.
yeah. I wonder if I had to choose, I feel like I would want to choose a job where I love because of the motivation factors, but I hate because it doesn't pay me enough. Like, I think in the end of the day, I might be more satisfied with my life, but maybe that's just me speaking from a place where my current job does give me better hygiene factors and motivation factors. And, money's not a problem. But maybe once I start having problem putting food on the table or meeting my bills, then going to work, we're going to have a conversation about this. Actually, maybe not exactly like this, but we're going to have a guest come on later who's coming from the nonprofit sector, which traditionally might have lower financially. I don't know about your friends specifically, but generally speaking, nonprofit is not going to have as high of a salary as, private sector, right? That's not judgment on anyone. I think that's objective fact. But yeah, the trade-off between, oh, I love my job, but, maybe it doesn't pay as much as I want. Or, damn, like I'm paying this rich, like my lawyer friend, but the fact is, I don't know how many lawyer friends you have. I have a lot of lawyer friends and they're all, I shouldn't say they're all miserable. That sounds bad, but they have all told me that like life is not that great and don't come into law, David. Like don't go to law school. Like I don't have any lawyers recommending their life to me.
No lawyers recommending law to you. Yeah. I mean, ideally, we all would like a balance on those two spectrums or continuums, but alas, it is hard.
Do you have friends who are like potentially wanting to change their careers or like quit their job and stuff?
Yeah. And I think it also has to do with, just being in one place for a long time. Like they want to see what else is out there, even if it's, the same line of work, but a different company, they would like to just try it out, Yeah.
So I am in the same space. And so there's actually a podcast I will put in the show notes that was so relevant to this. It's a podcast called like In This Economy by CBC. And it tackles different topics of like, how do you do this when the economy is so bad? So one of the topics was change jobs in this economy. I was like, wow, this is the perfect podcast for me.
Yeah.
And it mentioned right off the bat in that podcast that 71% of Canadians, according to a recent study, want to leave their job to look for new careers or better opportunities. That's an insane number.
It is very high.
Most people want to leave their jobs.
Yeah.
Damn. G does too. If there's a $1 million lawn mowing job out there.
Yeah. If there's a $1 million lawn mowing job out there, I would maybe quit. And take that. I see. I mean, and a lot of people are now also thinking about doing the whole side hustle thing. Like what they keep their jobs, but if they're able to start something on the side that maybe fuels more of their passions, of the things that they like to do, that's also another option that people have been looking a lot more into because there's more opportunities to do that, I think now. So
absolutely. I mean, that's super front of mind for me right now. We had Kim on a few weeks ago, and we're going to have another a guest on later this summer that will talk about that idea of pursuing their side hustle. Maybe to wrap up, to bring it home, that 30 show, right? How do you thrive in your 30s? Well, changing your job in your 30s is often not going to help you thrive. It's partly because the life responsibilities that you might be faced with in your 30s makes it really hard to start over. Do you know what I'm trying to get at here? So I'll give you an example. One of my best friends, he was a teacher. And, it's great things to be a teacher, but it didn't work out for him. He didn't really like that work for various reasons. And so he went back to school to study programming. And then now he's a software programmer. Good for him. And he has 2 very, very young kids. But he did this. He went back to school and changed his career in his, I think in his mid or late 20s. And only after he did that, did they start trying and have their first kid. Right? Because they're like, well, we're not financially stable right now. My husband's going back to school. Let's make sure we're like settled back. He has this new job, finance settled, and then we can have a kid. Yeah. Okay, but what if you are in a position where you want to start over, or your partner wants to start over, but you do want to have a kid, and the wife or the female is in their mid 30s or in their early 30s, and if having a kid early is important to you, which it is to a lot of people, then that's actually going to make it really tough. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it all depends on your life circumstance, where you are in your life right now. But I do think that it's like, to what extent is that, I can't do it anymore because I'm in my 30s. To what extent is that like real, or is that a limiting belief that you set on yourself, depending on where you are in your life, right? Because you might think, okay, well, this next career that I get, it's not going to make me as because you're thinking that because you're thinking the next career might not make me as much money or might not give me as many benefits. But what if it is better? Then you would have been like, oh, this was the right move because now I'm making even more for my family. So,
but then you got to take a step back before potentially take a step back for X number of years before you get that higher ceiling. And how much can you stomach?
Yeah. Which is why the whole side hustle thing is a great idea because you can have both.
And I think the other thing is not just having kids, but like I wanted to ask you, and maybe after this, if you have any other thoughts on other factors, let me know. But I was trying to think, what are the reasons that it's hard to do this sort of career change in your 30s? One is if you want to have kids soon and you're like, well, I can't afford to quit my job and start over. It's too late now. I need to be financially stable. But I think the other reason is by the time you're in your early to mid 30s and you want to change careers, assuming you've been in the same career or in the same company, for example, as maybe some of your friends have, you get to this point where you're like, damn, like I spent 10 years in building my experience and my skill set in this industry. I can't start over. And it's not even just financially. It's like, well, I'm going to have wasted all these years. So it's the idea of the sunk cost fallacy. I've gone this far, might as well just keep going. I think that's a very compelling and difficult compulsion to fight against.
For sure. But then you also got to think how many years you got left, which is the sunk cost fallacy is also how many years do you have left in the workforce? It's a lot more years than you've already been through. So I don't know. I always admire those people, like when they're in like their 50s, maybe that's when they don't care anymore, but then they start like this whole new career, like in their 50s, when they're about to retire, they're like, I'm going to start this brand new career. Like I'm going to quit everything that I just did for the past 40 years, 30 years. And I'm going to like try something completely new. Like I'm going to become a yoga instructor, but at least that I think maybe at that point, they don't have much to lose, I guess.
Yeah. Because at that point, right? They ideally, if they have kids, the kids are financially independent. They've graduated university, they're working their first jobs or whatnot. And you've saved up enough that you have a bit of, certainly more than compared to in your 30s when you're saving up for your kids, saving up for your kids' education, all that.
Yeah.
That's a great time to restart. The problem I have is that in your 30s, it's so hard to restart if you want to have a family. I guess if you don't want to have a family or if you have time because you're younger, then sure, it's not as big of a deal. But between family and between the sunk cost fallacy, I think it's really hard to change your career.
Yeah. I think having kids is definitely a big factor in deciding.
Yeah. Can you
how you
imagine if you have a
progress in your
friends like,
career.
they're like, oh, we're going to have a kid and also I'm quitting my job. And you're like, wait, hang on. Do you know how expensive stuff are?
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
So I would love to have a guest on who has done a career change in their 30s. I think between you and I, we haven't come up with an example of that. So if anyone is listening who is of that life experience, or if you know someone of that, let us know. We love to hear about sort of how that goes. Obviously, it's not representative of everyone's story, but just to hear of different stories anecdotally, I think it would be fascinating.
Yeah, you're talking about a different field, not just changing a different job. Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, I work at a university. If I quit my university and work in a different university, that's not a career change. Yeah. In 20 years, are you working for the public sector, for the government?
So hard to say. For the public sector, probably. I just feel like a lot of the things that I would ever want to do, I could probably find in the public sector.
Did you have any other points you wanted to bring up in terms of...
I think just, because you were the one having the crisis.
The life crisis,
so what do you think?
My biggest problem is that financial stability, because I want a family sooner rather than later.
Sure.
There's many things that I do that I would be happy to do for the rest of my life, especially when, like, for example, an ideal alternative career that I can see for myself is life coaching, which is one step further than career coaching, which I have a lot of experience in. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what my next step is. If any one of you all want to hire me, let me know.
Be a life
Looking
coach.
For work.
Yeah. Get David to coach your life and get me to mow your lawn. Anyone who's out there, looking for a life coach or a lawnmower, hit us up. But you would have to pay me $1 million, otherwise I wouldn't do it. So
yeah.
There's a caveat there.
Small caveat there.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you found this episode relatable, and even if it's, doesn't change anything within your career, at least it kind of helps to know that, a lot of other people are going through the same thing, I think.
All right. See you in another 2 weeks. Maybe in 2 weeks, the weather will be amazing and we'll all be in better spirits.
And we won't have the Sunday scaries.
No.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.